Most people live their lives chasing comfort like it's the ultimate prize. They build their routines around avoiding difficulty. They measure success by how smooth and easy things feel. But here's the hard truth: comfort doesn't build you, it softens you. And every time you choose it over challenge, you chip away at your edge, you give up the chance to grow. You trade progress for temporary relief. But nothing transformative has ever come out of ease. Discomfort, real, raw discomfort, is the forge where greatness is made. This isn't just mindset, it's biology. Your brain, your body, your nervous system, they all adapt to stress. That's how resilience is built. Through pressure, through repetition, through strain. If you want to build physical strength, you lift heavier weights. If you want to build emotional strength, you confront fear. If you want to build mental toughness, you face the work you don't want to do and you do it anyway. That's the path. There is no other. But we've created a world that teaches the opposite. One that tells you discomfort is dangerous. That struggle is failure. That pressure should be avoided. Everything is optimized to be effortless, automated, painless. People avoid challenge like it's a threat instead of recognizing it as a signal that you're in the exact place where growth begins. You can't destroy weakness by avoiding what exposes it. You destroy weakness by walking directly into it, over and over again, until it doesn't control you anymore, until your nervous system stops flinching at the sound of hard work, until pressure becomes normal, expected, even welcomed. The people you admire for their mental strength, for their composure, for their dominance, they didn't get that way by staying safe. They got that way by putting themselves in situations that forced them to evolve. They trained under tension. They didn't avoid the burn. They ran toward it. That's what it means to work like a psycho. It's not about being unhinged or reckless. It's about being relentless. It's about adopting a mindset where discomfort isn't just tolerated, it's pursued. Because you understand what it's building inside you. You understand that every time you do something hard, something that stretches you, scares you, tests you, you're installing new circuitry in your brain. You're conditioning your system to hold more pressure, to respond with more clarity, to recover faster and go deeper. You're not just doing the work. You're becoming the kind of person who can always do the work, no matter what. And that changes everything. When you stop seeing discomfort as a problem and start treating it as a teacher, your entire approach to life changes. You stop making excuses. You stop waiting to feel ready. You stop needing validation or motivation or the perfect timing. You just execute. Because the discomfort no longer owns you. You've absorbed it, adapted to it, used it. That's what separates the elite from everyone else. It's not luck. It's not talent. It's that willingness to show up to the hard things consistently. Not once, not twice, but day after day. Without fanfare, without shortcuts. Most people aren't weak because they're incapable. They're weak because they never stayed in the fire long enough to come out stronger. They backed off when it burned. They stepped away when it got uncomfortable. And then they wondered why they never broke through. But if you're willing to stay in it, if you can keep showing up when it's not fun, when it's not glamorous, when no one's watching, you become dangerous. Because now you're not just skilled, you're hardened. Now you're not just smart, you're sharp. And when the pressure comes, and it will, you won't fold. You'll lock in, you'll move forward. Because discomfort is no longer your enemy, it's your training ground. So stop chasing ease. Stop praying for smooth days and soft landings. Start seeking out the friction, the resistance, the stretch. That's where the transformation lies. That's where you shed what's fragile and build what's formidable. Lean into the pain and let it make you unbreakable. We live in a world that praises balance. Balance between work and life, balance between ambition and rest, balance between passion and peace. And while that sounds noble, what it often becomes is a justification for mediocrity, a ceiling disguised as wisdom, a way to stay comfortable, stay in control, and stay safe from the intensity it actually takes to achieve anything that truly matters. The truth is, real breakthroughs never come from balance. They come from obsession, from total immersive focus, from locking into a goal so deeply that everything else becomes background noise. People shy away from that word, obsession. They treat it like a flaw, like something unstable. But let me be clear, the people who change industries, change teams, change history, they don't get there with casual interest. They get there by working like they're possessed. Not distracted, not hedging, not half in, half out, fully locked in. Because that level of focus activates something different in the mind. It strips away the irrelevant. It burns off the hesitation. It builds momentum so powerful, it starts to feel inevitable. And that's not luck, that's neurobiology. That's what happens when you commit your brain to a single target and eliminate all the noise. Your attention becomes a weapon. Your perception sharpens. You see what others miss. You move faster, make decisions cleaner, recover from setbacks without spiraling. Because you're not negotiating with yourself every 5 minutes. You're not chasing motivation. You're locked into mission now. I get it. There's a cultural fear around this. People think working like that is unhealthy or unsustainable. But what's actually unsustainable is the mental drain of switching directions every day, of juggling 1,000 minor goals and never going deep on any of them. That's what exhausts people. That's what burns them out. They're not overworked, they're undercommitted. They're spread too thin to feel momentum and too distracted to feel progress. But when you go all in, when you let yourself become obsessed, something else happens. The work doesn't drain you, it energizes you. It gives you clarity, not confusion. It makes decisions obvious because you're no longer asking, should I do this? You've already decided. There's only forward. I'm not talking about reckless speed. I'm talking about calculated intensity, ruthless alignment, taking your energy, your time, your vision, and putting it behind one outcome again and again and again. It's not that you never rest. It's that even your rest has a purpose. Even your downtime is part of the strategy because the outcome matters that much. This isn't about being busy. This is about being committed. There's a difference. A lot of people work hard, but they work in loops, in circles. They're busy reacting to whatever shows up next. That's not intensity. That's just motion. The people who win move with purpose. They don't let every distraction take their eyes off the target. They're not checking in with their feelings every time it gets difficult. They don't need to feel perfect to keep going. They just need the mission to still be worth it. And when it is, they double down again and again. That's the mindset. You don't work like a psycho because you're unstable. You work like a psycho because you've decided. Because you've seen what happens when you go halfway, when you take breaks at the wrong time, when you let emotions make decisions that strategy should be making. And you're done with that. You've seen what it costs to stay casual, and it's too high. And yes, people will judge it. They'll say you're doing too much, that you're too intense, that you need to relax. But here's the thing, they're projecting their limits onto you. They don't know what it feels like to be in flow for hours, locked into a goal so completely that the noise fades. They haven't seen what happens when discipline compounds over weeks, months, years. They haven't lived what it feels like to move with precision, because you've stopped negotiating with your potential. But you have, or you're about to. This level of intensity isn't for everyone. It's not supposed to be. That's what makes it powerful. But if you want to build a ruthless mindset, this is where it starts. With obsession, with the relentless focus on what matters, and the discipline to keep showing up until it's done. Not when it's easy, not when it's popular, but when it's finished. So stop apologizing for being locked in. Lean into it. Let people talk. Let them wonder. While they're watching, you're building. While they're distracted, you're gaining ground. While they're managing their balance, you're creating dominance. Focus like your future depends on it. Because it does. ChatGPT said most people are prisoners to how they feel in the moment. They wake up tired, so they skip the work. They feel overwhelmed, so they back off. They feel fear, so they delay the decision. And they think all of this is justified because the emotion feels real, and in that moment, real becomes truth. But there's a problem with that. Emotions are not reliable indicators of what you should do. They're not designed to guide you toward greatness. They're designed to keep you comfortable, to keep you safe, to preserve the current state. And if you let that run the show, you'll never build anything extraordinary. The human mind is hardwired for survival, not success. The wiring that tells you to stop when you're tired, to avoid risk, to stay small, that's biology doing its job. But success requires you to override that system. Not because you're ignoring reality, but because you're choosing a different one. You're not rejecting your emotions. You're refusing to be ruled by them. You're shifting from being emotionally driven to being mission driven. And that changes everything. Let me make this clear. Your emotions will lie to you. They will tell you that you can't do something when you can. They will tell you to quit when you still have more to give. They will tell you that comfort equals peace, when in reality, comfort is often the first step toward decline. That's the nature of emotion. It reacts. It doesn't evaluate. It doesn't plan. Emotion is a momentary signal. And if you take that signal as law, you become inconsistent, undisciplined, and eventually ineffective. Now contrast that with discipline. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. Discipline doesn't ask for permission. It simply acts in alignment with the mission. It's consistent, predictable, powerful, and over time it becomes part of your identity. Not because it's easy, but because you've trained your mind to operate above your emotions. You've made execution the standard, not the exception. And when that shift happens, when discipline replaces emotional dependency, results follow. Not sometimes, not when it feels right, every single time. You don't need to feel like doing the work. You need to do the work. And the more you do that, the more your nervous system adapts. That's how habits form. Not through motivation, but through repetition in the face of resistance. That's how mental toughness is built. Not in moments of inspiration, but in those quiet, painful seconds when your feelings beg you to quit and you move anyway. The brain changes through pattern. And the most powerful pattern you can build is this: act regardless of emotion. When you live like this, something begins to shift inside you. You start seeing emotions not as enemies, but as noise, background interference. You acknowledge them, but you don't serve them. They pass, and the work remains. And over time, what once felt difficult becomes normal. What once required force becomes fluid. Because you've trained your system to stay aligned when everything else screams for comfort or distraction. That's what it means to build a ruthless mindset. It's not about becoming robotic. It's about becoming unshakable. It's about understanding that real power isn't in how you feel. It's in what you do with consistency, regardless of those feelings. And once you build that, once your identity is tied to execution, not emotion, you stop negotiating with your potential. You stop questioning whether today is the day to show up. It's always the day, because your standard doesn't bend to mood. Look around. The people who win don't feel like it every day. They're not superhuman. They've just made a decision, a real one, and they honor it through discipline. They've learned how to navigate the highs without getting arrogant and the lows without getting paralyzed. Dylan's son, because they're grounded in something deeper than emotion. They're grounded in purpose. One of the most dangerous voices you'll ever hear isn't coming from the outside. It's not your critics, your competitors, or even your failures. It's the quiet voice inside your head that whispers, "You're a victim." That voice doesn't scream, it doesn't argue, it rationalizes. It says, "This isn't fair." It says, "They don't understand." It says, "I would be further if it weren't fog." Fill in the blank. Circumstances, people, timing. The voice always has a reason, and it always sounds justified. But if you listen long enough, it becomes your identity. And that's where it kills you. That victim mindset is subtle, but it's corrosive. It starts small. Self-pity after a loss. Frustration when you're overlooked. Fatigue disguised as burnout. And then it grows. You stop taking full responsibility. You begin to expect life to accommodate you. You become more reactive, more entitled, and less capable. You start believing the world owes you something. That's the trap. And it doesn't just make you weaker. It disconnects you from the very power you need to climb out. No one is immune to adversity. Everyone gets hit. Life will challenge you, delay you, hurt you. You will be betrayed. You will be underestimated. You will fail in ways that feel unfair. That's not the exception. That's the process. But what defines you is how you respond. Do you collapse inward, looking for someone or something to blame? Or do you stand up, even in the chaos, and say, "I don't care how hard it gets, I will keep moving"? That's the dividing line. Victims wait, leaders move. And moving forward doesn't mean pretending everything's fine. It means owning the pain without being owned by it. It means acknowledging setbacks without becoming one. The people who build ruthless mindsets aren't emotionally numb. They're emotionally trained. They feel what's real, diligent son, but they don't drown in it. They let the emotions come and then they move forward anyway. That's power. You cannot afford to live in the victim space, not because it's wrong, but because it's ineffective. It produces nothing but delay. You cannot build momentum from blame. You cannot grow from excuse. When you live in that headspace, you become reactive instead of intentional. You start seeing problems everywhere and solutions nowhere. You start questioning yourself, then others, and then the process. Before long, you're paralyzed. But you've rationalized it as rest. You're stagnant. But you've labeled it as self-care. That's how the voice works. And the worst part is, it's seductive. The victim voice feels safe. It feels righteous. It gives you something to hold to when everything else feels uncertain. But it's a short-term high with long-term destruction. It strips you of your edge. It teaches your mind to seek comfort in retreat. And over time, that becomes who you are. Not someone who overcomes, but someone who waits to be rescued. You want to build a ruthless mindset. Start by killing that voice. Not just once. Every time it shows up, the moment it says, "Why me?" replace it with, "Try me." The second it looks outward, look inward. This is about ownership. Total, radical, brutal ownership. Because the moment you claim full responsibility, you reclaim your power. You take control back from circumstances, back from people, back from excuses. And you place it where it belongs, in your own hands. That shift, right there, is where transformation begins. When you stop identifying with the pain and start identifying with the possibility. When you stop telling the story of what held you back and start writing the one about how you fought forward. The world doesn't give power to victims. It gives sympathy. That might feel good for a moment. But sympathy won't build your vision. Sympathy won't sharpen your focus. Sympathy won't keep you moving at 4 a.m. when it's all on the line. Only ownership can do that. Only fire can do that. I'm not saying you haven't been through things. I'm saying it's time to stop letting them define you. The world may not be fair, but that doesn't mean you can't be formidable. That doesn't mean you can't be relentless. You weren't built to be coddled. You were built to rise, even in the dark. Especially in the dark. Every time that voice shows up, you have a decision. Feed it or fight it. You can't do both. And if you're serious about building a ruthless mindset, if you're serious about dominating in your lane, then the fight has to be non-negotiable. That means confronting the lie every single time it surfaces and replacing it with action, with clarity, with responsibility. Because in the end, the victim in your head doesn't need your compassion. It needs to be silenced.